morning, everybody. A Thursday again, and time for another talk, another thought, another repetition, consolidation. So, today we are going to basically think of consolidation. Um, in my last many years that I've been working with teachers, with schools, with webinars, with workshops, each time I went for a workshop, people would attend it, they would enjoy it, they would find it relevant at that point of time. And then when my workshop used to finish with activities and all the concepts and flashcards and board games and just name it, and we would give them options, they at the end of the session would say, it was really nice, but we can't do all of this, ma'am, because we have to prepare them for class 1. I always wondered what that meant, that when you say prepare them for class 1, isn't all of this a preparation for class 1? And why was it viewed anything differently? So children would, suppose, finish the session on 15th or 16th of March. They would come and take their assessment results, portfolios on maybe the 21st, 22nd of March. And between the 8 days, that is when class 1 opens about 2nd or 3rd of April, they would suddenly be grown up and treated like they were adults. Their hours would go up, the teachers would change, they would become from mother teachers to subject teachers. They would start making them copy from the board. They would start lessons with the first lesson was tick the right sign, SIGN. The child doesn't really know anything about it. They would expect them to read words which they don't really remember or actually know. And by the 3rd or 4th, maximum the 5th week into class 1, the first unit assessment starts. This is the generic process which we see all around. If you are an exception, then God bless you. But that is not the exception. That is not the rule. The rule is that the children go to class 1 and they start their lessons, they start question answers, they start notebooks, they start copying from the board, and then they are we keep talking of continuous comprehensive evaluation. Nothing like that happens. They have proper unit tests, papers are given to them, and they are prepared like a proper test pattern. And this is not an uncommon thing you see. Very recently, even as recently as 2 weeks back, there was somebody who gave me a call and said, well, we don't want, activities are fine, but we write swar at when the child is 3-year-old. Really? Why? And then we have to assess it by so-and-so months, so we need more practice. So when are we consolidating? When are we putting together all the very hard work that the earlier teachers have done? So perhaps that is the reason why NEP 2020 has asked class 1 and 2 to be a part of this foundation early years now. So that the UKG teacher, the teacher of that 5-year-old, does not have to force this little 5-year-old to keep moving forward for some illogical reasoning of running forward with the syllabus. And everybody will tell you, we have to finish the syllabus. So what syllabus is this? That is not allowing for consolidation. That's not allowing for the gathering of the skills. So I thought it was relevant to talk about it because this is the beginning of the year. NEP is not going to be a magical appearance in our lives. We all have to make it happen consciously. We can't say we will wait for the rules to come. You will set the rules according to suggestions, according to already the patterns given to you. So the first, and specifically in the time of the pandemic when children have not come to school, I think the relevance of consolidation in class 1 is 10 times more than it ever was before. Always the consolidation was important, which we ignored. But now in these circumstances, it is even more necessary. Don't open your textbooks and start teaching them from day 1 because you want to complete the syllabus. This is exactly what we are trying to fight. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and consolidate all the things I can remember offhand, which we teach in the first 3 years. As early as teachers, we make such an effort to do all of this. And then suddenly in class one, when there is no consolidation of all of this, and you take the children forward at a very, very fast speed, the children, some of them will cope, and many, many of them don't cope at all. Some cope moderately. So let us not leave it for the not coping and see what all we need to consolidate in the first 10 to 12 weeks. Let's even make it 8 weeks, but consolidate each skill, each process that has been taught to the child. It could be as small as checking the writing grip of the child, the pincer grip. It's the first thing that the child is going to need to write correctly. So why are we not checking it in class one? Why do we suddenly forget about it? Right? Small things, visual memory, auditory memory, what all the concepts are. So I'm to go through each part bit by bit so that we can understand why we need to consolidate. Now, just before we go to the next step, I'm going to consolidate a few weeks of small activities that we have been giving the teachers. So at the end of each day, we give you a little sheet like that, and each sheet has something for the teachers to do. And we hope that these are used, because if these are used and you start creating a little a little wall, a little folder for yourself, perhaps it would help you a lot. So the first one was about self-reflecting. How much time do you take to self-reflect? How important it is for early years educators to reflect, unlearn, and relearn. Compare this time to the last time of the year and see where you are today. The next one that we gave you was developmental domains. So all the developmental domains are so relevant because today we will be covering each domain and see what all is so necessary to consolidate before we move them on to the next steps of learning. Then after that, we came to connecting the head, heart, and hand and the activities for learners. What all activities can you put in this? And very important was the learning milestones and early years. So take one topic, if you've not already done it, download it and see what all activities you can do with the same topic for different age groups. And then today we've given you a little printout where you can sit down and fill in the most important topics you think that need to be consolidated in class one. So you can use these sheets not only as your own reference points, but this would become very nice if you have to, empower the new teachers, teachers who just come into your systems, teachers who are new to the teaching community. So these little things that they fill for themselves will make them recap, make them recollect that are we ready to do a consolidation for ourselves, our own skills, and then do the consolidation for children. I think it's very important. Anything that we have to do for children, the first application is to ourselves. I just finished a webinar of art integration for the CBSE, and it was so wonderful to hear the panelists, what all they were talking about, the kind of skills that art will bring in. And imagine we are just hurrying towards the academic curriculum. So consolidation, teachers, is a very, very important thing. For all the parents watching, it's very important. Give your children time to sit back and consolidate. I'll give you a small example. When people go fishing, when you go fishing, you go with a fishing rod. So when you throw the rod in the water and the fish catches the hook, if you pull the rod out instantly, the fish can get released. So all your hours of fishing goes away. So a good fisherman, I'm told, rests the rod in the water. Just rests the rod. So after the catch is there, they rest the rod. So what is the logic of it? When you rest the rod, the struggle stops, and then you can pull out your prey, catch. And this is like a cyclic thing of of how you do things. I just took it as an example because Resting a process, taking a step back, breathing, allowing it to seep in is important in any context. So, like they say, rest the rod a bit, consolidate things, and then move on to the next step. I think the children will gain out much more. So, starting from the beginning, why do we have to consolidate? We have to consolidate because the first 3 years that the child comes to school before the 6 years old, 85% of the brain basic foundational development has happened. So imagine the pace at which it's happening. It's going to be obviously a fast pace. There's a lot of things happening during that time. Now, whatever has been developed during that time, and the child is about 6 years old, it's a lot that the child has learned and absorbed. And if we don't revisit it, we don't recollect it, how do we expect the child to retain it in the long run? So, the consolidation, and that is what the new education policy, national education policy is saying. Please consolidate. Please consolidate all the major areas of development. Consolidate the physical development, pincer grip, threading of the beads, sorting of the material, working with hands-on resources, working with paint, with clay, with plasticine, which is getting it all right. Consolidate the social emotional development. When the children come to class one, very, very ruthlessly, we just change the sections. We just mix up the children. We just unnerve them so completely. And we say we are preparing them for the senior classes. Sometimes teachers don't want to even move from the classroom they're used to. So I think we must consider the fact that they will be friends of this child. And we are not doing anything great by separating them so early in life. Let them be secure in the early years of their life. And gradually, as they grow, as they get more used to things, as they can become more resilient, then you can start doing these things. Suddenly, from kindergarten to class 1 in 10 days, this little baby is not going to grow up. And our attitudes need that little bit of change. I was seeing teachers, just mix the children up, mix up the groups, allow that mental comfort to start setting in before you start doing this to children. I think it's important to do that. Language development is something which we will talk about in detail. The number of things the children learn. So it's very important to consolidate. If we don't do that, things can go really, and that is where we go wrong. So language. Now, when we start doing language development, what all are we consolidating? When we are doing social emotional development, what all are we consolidating? So what I'm going to do is, because the list is so long, it's just nice to go through it together once. So as I can't remember everything, so I will look down for my notes, because you need to have a reference point when you're doing a large amount of consolidation. So don't rush and push children. The answer is no, don't rush them. Why? Because children will have learning styles. Children will have to learn through their senses, through language, through moving, motivation, and most important, imitation. Accept children at the pace they are. We cannot just rush the pace. It doesn't work. Give the children freedom to enjoy themselves a little more. Try and provide more experiences and have realistic expectations. I think that is so important. Every time a class KG kindergarten teacher meets a class 1 child teacher, she will always say, your children can't sit still. Your children don't read from the board. Your children don't listen. Your children, so, well, they're not meant to. We did not train them to sit for 45 minutes and copy from the board. We used to give them activities. We used to move the children after 15, 20 minutes. We interacted with them in a different way. So rather than asking why the class 1 child is not behaving in A, B, or C fashion, which you expect the child to do, please look at yourselves and say, why don't you adapt to those children? And why not? They're suddenly subject teachers. I'm seeing a lot of schools reverting back to mother teachers, which is so good. You can rotate the mother teachers. The mother teachers, in the sense, if there are 4 sections and there are 4 mother teachers, they can actually Go to each other's classes and take a few sessions if you want some kind of variety for the children. But how can you make this KG child suddenly study for 40 minutes and complain that the child doesn't copy from the board? Why do you write so much on the board? You have beautiful textbooks, you have everything, but you will make the child copy from the board. Why? So that's what you have to ask yourself, that when you are consolidating, when you are getting the work together, you're not going to force this little child to work in some XYZ fashion. You will work in the fashion that the child is used to. So we also suggest a lot of interaction between the class 1 teachers and the KG teachers, the level 2 teachers, so that they understand how these children work in these years and they consolidate that in the class 1. Some schools do it, but many schools just don't do it. So it's very important for all of us to do it. It's also important that children need a lot of acceptance. They need a balance. They need creative expression. They need fun, play, group activities. They need a very happy, comfortable environment. And then the child is going to flourish. If you don't do that, how do we expect this child to do really well? It doesn't really work like that, right? So starting with classroom management and activities, your children must know how to have activities in small groups, in teamwork, in pair working, large group working, and and individual working. What we do is in the early years, we have a lot of activities in the different settings. Like, for example, we'll do small group working, we will do pair working, we will do. And suddenly, when the children come to class 1, mostly they are working individually because they're working in notebooks. So, first thing is to be conscious and consolidate the classroom setting. They can be sitting in rows, it's perfectly all right, but the activity settings must be consolidated. You must allow them to continue activities with pairs, with small groups, then you do your large group, your circle time. All this suddenly disappears in class 1. While it is such an important part of the early years, it suddenly disappears in class 1 and 2. So that needs to be consolidated, the classroom settings. How you do your theme boards, how you do your processing, all that needs to be consolidated. Even your theme boards with pockets, your reading walls, everything needs a consolidation. So activity settings are very important to consolidate. Communicating with children is so important. You know, how you communicate with the children, how you talk to them. Suddenly they don't become adults. You will still have to have a nice entrance. You will still have to be there to receive them. You will still have to put the little smileys in pockets and boxes. You will still have to have the little smileys for attendance. All this is also the way you communicate constructively with children. So classroom settings and activities, constructive and very healthy, friendly communication. Suddenly you can't do copy from the board. It's not fair for these children, right? So positive speech, what kind of language you use, please watch out for it. Keep it simple. What we ask the teachers to do is to give instructions to activities which are very specific. Don't give long instructions. Like a small child can do 2 instructions easily. A 3-year-old, a 4-year-old can perhaps follow 3 instructions. 5, 6-year-olds, whenever you're doing an activity, don't have more than 5 instructions. So find a partner, get your cards, place them on the table, match them, and then play this particular game, and then put it back in your bowl. So the children will have everything in 5 steps. So keep the instructions simple, be specific, be praise in sense of what the child is used to, because suddenly when the child comes to class 1, the praise goes down a lot. Talk to listen. Every time you're talking to the child, listen to the child, because the child has their own apprehensions in class 1. Suddenly, even the parents are telling them, all this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this, ab tum bade ho gaye ho, you've grown up now. So this little one may not feel grown up. So please talk to listen to this particular child. Control your voices, control the way you handle them. And I think that is how it works so much better. Positive reinforcements are very important. Continue them like they have in the little children's classes. where you give them little things, you give them a platform, you let them. So positive reinforcements are very, very important. Disciplining the children at in class 1. What is your mode of disciplining the children? What is the norm you follow? How do you do it? So like they say that be very, very careful on not cutting down any time. You can't say, if you don't copy from the board, I won't let you go out and play. That's not fair for the child. You will allow the child to do things that the child enjoys doing, yet set limits. Don't so that's one very important thing. Please don't give them timeouts for work that they are unable to complete because they are not ready for it. So, any discipline in private, call the children, talk to them, they will listen to you. Consistency is very important. Prompt action is very important. Talking to the previous teacher and parents is very important so that you know if there are any issues that need to be taken care of. Listen to the child. This child's learning indicative or learning graph by this class one is a child who can express himself or herself. By this time they have an opinion, they have a thought, they have reasoning. So listen to these children. When the children are little smaller, their milestone is not of so much of logical self reasoning. This child is going to have it. Their milestone is there. So be conscious about it. That this child likes to is declaring, the fact that I'm thinking for myself. So do listen to the child. Do a lot of artwork for the child to show expression. It could be artwork with music, it could be artwork with color, it could be with rhythms, it could be just decoration, painting. A lot of artwork will help you to actually see the rhythms and patterns of this child. What would you do if these children are consistently not behaving in a particular social norm? So the first thing I would say is talk to the previous teacher, because this is where the behavioral consolidation also has to happen. Sometimes this child is going through a certain patch in the early years, in the KG, and suddenly the teacher in class 1 doesn't know about it. So handling this is very, very important. Uh, Give them choices, in the sense that limited choices. So if we have to do this way or this way. You can't do the third way because it's going to be destroying whatever equilibrium of the class. So teach them that I am going to give you two choices. You have to pull one of them up. You have to use one of them. Gradually, the children start responding. It's very, very important. Also, temper tantrums of the children. How would you handle it? So moving the child away, eye contact, keeping your voice in absolute control, and allowing the child to see that that is how the child needs to behave. So I think, a mirroring is very, very, very important. The learning environment, like I said, the learning setting is very important. The positivity in the environment. Another very big change that the children see is the table setting. Suddenly you will move them from group seating to row seating. So once in a while, group activities would be really nice to have. Once in a while, allowing them, set up small corners that, they suddenly don't allow this child to come into a classroom, which is like completely like an adult classroom, from a very sweet, nice, colorful classroom the child is just walking into. So please allow the class 1 classrooms to be as interesting, as exciting, with little activity corner, maybe with a little art corner, with a little reading corner. Maybe you can change the concept, but do give one part of your classroom the look and feel where the child can actually go to certain activities. All this is a part of consolidation. It's very, very important. Getting the curriculum in place. Now, what is the curriculum? Now, the curriculum for class 1 is putting a lot of books together, which is fine. But after that, what are the concepts? How do you do them? How much of the old concepts you're recapping is very, very important. How many activities are a base part of your design? You can't put 20 chapters and then just fit in activities. It doesn't fit in. They will not fit in. So you have to take a glass of water. Say, suppose there's a glass of water. You have to put in the bigger things, the bigger pebbles. Then you have to put in the smaller, smaller pebbles. Then you have to put the sand, and then you have to put the water. What we do So for me, those big pebbles that you're fitting in are the activities. If you don't put them in the beginning, at the end, they will not fit in. So the main thing of the curriculum is activities that have to fit in for every concept. Fit that in and then everything else fits around it. That is how early years curriculum should be done. Sorry, today's just been a very, very, hectic day in the sense of the throat. So yeah, a little bit of disturbance, but we'll carry on. So it's very, very important to get all that in mind. Put your activity and of the week where your writing curriculum has to go up. That is the week where the concepts are already formed. So you don't have to worry about activity at that time. But in the beginning of every activity, every concept, there should be an activity which the child can do at a comfort zone. Also, it has to have a complete integration and continuity in the sense that suppose you're doing number skills activities, it should be integrated in the day-to-day learning. And then when you're doing the next chapter, there should be a certain recap and continuity. So don't suddenly isolate children. We don't do that in the pre-primary. We take the child step by step. So please continue for that. Long range planning and short range planning is another very important thing. When you do the long range planning, the looking back and consolidation is very important because that's the time you can base your long range. And short term will keep changing as your children grow, right? So that is how we will work. And we will, so language development and readiness. I'm going to very quickly take you through all the concepts that the child learns, which we need to recap, right? So the child learns rhymes, stories, visual discrimination, same objects, different objects, matching objects, picking up the object which doesn't fall into the category, visual memory, that means recollecting and recalling, auditory discrimination, listening to same things, listening to different things, identifying different words, identifying sounds and words, rhymes, stories, all this is what the child is learning. Then the child's auditory memory, orientation, moving from left to right, top to bottom, all these are things that the child is learning in the first 3 years. And then we are not kind of consciously doing activities on these topics. So do them, put them in your curriculum and say, okay, so I need to do certain activities like this, certain activity under this head. So that is why I'm going through even something like an orientation with books, moving from left to right. Uh, the most important for language development, the vocabulary. So get your vocabulary list together. Get every word that the child has learned in the early years, put down on paper for the teachers. And then use it in some form or the other. Let the child revisit it. Let the child read it. Put up reading walls. There's just so much to do. And then when you get the vocabulary in place, you'll realize how many nouns have you taught the child? How many verbs have you taught the child? How many position words have you taught the child? How many describing words have you taught the child? How many pronouns have you taught? How many sight words have you taught? And the expanse will be so fantastic. And if the child recalls it, by the time the child comes to class 1, the child is a little older also. So the ability to absorb all of this all over again and consolidate becomes much stronger. It's like any of us. Like for example, when I learned how to drive the first time, I have to keep looking at the gears. Of course, now you have automatic cars, but you have to keep looking at the gear and the brake. Over a period, you just do it as a habit. So allow that over a period practice to come to this child. And now when I have to do something new and I'm confident that I can do this well, I will do that better. Because I have consolidated all my skills, my thoughts, my words, my sentences, my grammar concepts. We all say we'll introduce grammar in class 1. Really, grammar was introduced right from the beginning. Because the children, I mean, you don't use wrong grammar, right, for children, for the early years. So grammar is already been taught to them, just maybe not done in very strong slots. So all this is a part of consolidation, which is so important. Allow the child to look at the words, to look at the pictures, to look at the stories, The same story that the child has done in the early in the beginners level 1 and level 2 will suddenly change the way the child does it in class 1. But we are not consolidating. I don't see children singing rhymes. I don't see them saying stories. Everything is about the lesson and the question answers and the fill in the blanks and the match the following. Many people listening to me will tell me, Madam, that's the syllabus. The syllabus is also consolidation. Fortunately, the national education policy is asking you to do it now. We have been asking as early as teachers. I think I have always walked up to a class 1 teacher and saying, why do you rush the children? Why do you rush the children? Just hold on for a couple of weeks. Then they will pace up with you. But just nobody listens. And even now, I just feel that even after all this recommendation, all these policy making, there will be schools who will just not do it, saying that no, this is what we would like to do. This is not about what you would like to do. This is about researchers. This is about people who have researched thousands of children, who have come up with a review that numeracy and literacy is lacking in the early years. They are reports from all over, the best organizations, the best research organizations are saying this, that please consolidate. Otherwise, year after year, we are not going to get very good reports on the long-term abilities for children to read and write. All the skills I'm talking about are going to lead to better understanding and application with the reading and writing, which is not harmful. But without understanding, it just has no meaning. I have class 1 children writing up to 1,000. I mean, the child is just come out of the kindergarten. Wait for a little while. Let the child consolidate. Let the child understand. Go through everything. Maths has so many concepts. Understanding sequence, putting patterns, the shapes, the two-dimensional shapes, three-dimensional shapes, the number and counting, the counting and the number, concrete to abstract. So there is just so much happening in number skills as well. And we just take them off straight.